Hey babe, would you like to get some goats with me? Start a little farm, no need for alarm. Get some chickens and horses, little lambs of courses. Yeah, we've been milking them goats, I'm making that cheese all day, all night.
Welcome everyone, bienvenidos. Gay Spring! Gay Poetry Month! You've made it to the one and only Collectibles reading series featuring the poets of Headmistress Press and from the fabulous Lesbian trading card series, the vision of the wonderful poets at Headmistress Press, Marian, Risa Denenberg, and including the live open mic that always features fabulous LGBTQ writers. Well, I'm your host, Sandy Yanone. I'm the author of Boats for Women from Salmon Poetry, and I honestly couldn't be more thrilled than to welcome you today to be in the company of the dynamic duo of Nickole Brown and Jessica Jacobs. And why not double the features during National Poetry Month? Brilliant move, Headmistress Press. Great. Well, we are so fortunate to have these two exceptional poets who have been making such powerful contributions to poetry through their myriad interests inside and outside of poetry's scope. They're such honestly interesting human beings as poets, but just as people. Well, before I introduce them, a Poetry Month reminder that you can purchase your very own trading cards, as well as Headmistress Press titles at the Headmistress Press website, which we will graciously put in the chat for our live Zoom audience, and encourage those of you watching this either live or in a future virtual time to go to the Headmistress Press website. Well, now for our featured readers, and I will be reading both of your cards one after the other. It is my delight to welcome just two poets whom I truly admire. I don't know any other way to say it. And so what a grand joy for me to be able to introduce Nickole Brown, card number 26. Nickole Brown's deep interest in hybrid work is reflected in her two books, Fanny Says from Boa Editions 2015, a biography in poems about her grandmother, and Sister from Red Hen Press 2007, a novel in poems. Through much of her childhood, though much of her childhood was spent in Deerfield Beach, Florida, Nickole considers herself a Kentucky native. Growing up in Louisville, she worked at a used bookstore, and at 18 was part of a group that read with Gregory Corso and Allen Ginsberg at New York University. Shortly after, she worked as an editorial assistant for Hunter S. Thompson. She graduated from the University of Louisville and studied at Oxford in England and received her MFA from Vermont College of Fine Arts. For 10 years, Nickole worked at Saraband Books and then continued as a publicity consultant for individual poets, as well as for Arctoy Books, an imprint for lesbian writers. Nickole also taught at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock for 4 years until leaving in order to write and research full-time. Now, Nickole regularly teaches seminars and workshops at universities and conferences nationally, and serves as the editor of the Marie Alexander Poetry Series. She currently lives in Asheville, North Carolina, with her wife, the poet, Jessica Jacobs. And here is her other chapbook. Oh, I adore this chapbook from Rattle. to those who were our first gods. And she'll tell you about her newest chapbook, From Sibling Rivalry. Well, also we have Jessica Jacobs. Jessica Jacobs is the author of Pelvis with Distance, a biography and poems of the artist Georgia O'Keeffe, published by White Pine Press. It won the 2015 New Mexico Book Award for Poetry, was selected by the American Library Association for their Over the Rainbow list, and was a finalist for the Lambda Literary Award. Jessica holds an MFA from Purdue University and a BA from Smith College. Her poetry, essays, and fiction have appeared widely in publications including Beloit Poetry Journal, the Oxford American, and the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day series. An avid long-distance runner, Jessica has worked as a rock climbing instructor, bartender, editor, and professor. In 2016, Jessica served as the writer in residence at Hendrix College in Conway, Arkansas, and is on faculty at writing workshops in Greece. She lives in Asheville, North Carolina, with her wife, the poet Nickole Brown, and her latest collection is the beautiful Take Me With You Wherever You're Going. Would you please welcome Nickole Brown and Jessica Jacobs?
Thank you so much.
I just want to say the fandom is mutual. These are two of Sandy's books. They're delightful. We love them.
We love them, and we love the trading cards. It's the only way we get to like, look at that guy. Yeah. And by the way, Sandy, like, I'm always in awe of your hats. I was expecting a top hat, but now you've gone tweed, and I'm really like in a tweed phase of my life. I don't know, can't explain it, but I'm loving your hat a lot.
Well, thank you for having us, and it's been so beautiful to get to know you all, Mary and Risa, just over the last number of years, and we're very grateful for just all the opportunities you've given us for readings, for publishing our poems, and making us into trading cards, which, like, never thought that would happen. So,
okay, Sandy, what number is Jessica? Because I'm 26. What number is she?
I was the season before you. Sorry.
She's like, I'm earlier than you. Did you? And you didn't hear that because we were muted.
He's 24. One of my lucky numbers. I was born on the 24th of April.
Thank you. Wait, you're 26?
I'm 26.
Oh, that's my birthday. So there you go. So we thought we would just tell you a little bit about ourselves and what we've been up to during this super weird pandemic year, and then kind of split our time and go back and forth with reading. So, one of the things that we did want to tell you about was we did not, those are our newest books, but we actually co-authored our first book, which was a book of writing prompts. Oh, thank you, Risa.
Thanks, Risa.
Yeah, it's called Write It, 100 Poetry Prompts to Inspire. This is like the nicest crowd ever. Go ahead. Did you want to say anything about it?
No, go ahead.
Oh, well, so it published last October, and because we were super lonely and having a hard time writing, we thought that a way to remedy both things was to kind of put out into the universe the energy we felt like we needed. So we started offering free online workshops, and it's been really amazing. Twice a month. We've had, sometimes between 80 and 100 people joining us from all over the country, sometimes India, England, all over the place.
And it's good to get them writing even at times when we couldn't write ourselves. And what's cool too is that a lot of them have formed their own community, responding to one another's work and coming together. And I think when I think about the best lesbian trading card ever, I think of Eloise Klein-Healy, who is a dear friend of mine and who founded Arctoy Press years ago. And one of the things that Eloise always told me about Arctoy was that, you know, not only were we publishing one book by a lesbian author each year, but that it was her idea that it would start a community and a conversation and to open it up to something much more deeper than that.
And kind of in that vein, you know, we've been trying to think, you know, even once hopefully the world opens again, we finally got our second vaccination and are feeling somewhat back to normal.
Although some of us are complaining about their sore arm.
One of our arms is a little sore. But in addition to maybe doing some traveling, because that's really how we primarily were making our living, was traveling around, giving readings and teaching together. We founded a literary organization together called Sun June. And we are going to offer a series of online workshops this fall. And I'm just going to share the screen with you real fast so you can take a look at it.
Yeah. So the idea is that we'll still do the free generative sessions every other week. But they were also offering more intense workshops, you know, with Zoom technology. It's just too easy to pass up. And so I'll be teaching a class about finding the poetry of plants and trees. I taught it once before, actually. Rosalie, who was here, who took that. And then Jessica, you've got 2 classes that you're going to teach.
And our dear friend Lauren, who was here and her power went out, is teaching an incredible course on revision. So that will be in the fall. And then I'll be teaching 2 classes on writing about spirituality and religion through poetry. And the classes will be independent, but they will talk to each other if you were to take both of them. And all of this is on that link that I put in the chat. So if you have any interest, please let us know. And
we'll be teaching our last free generative session Tuesday night.
Yep.
And please, you know, come join us if you feel up for it.
Yeah, you can just send us a message and we'll send you the link to that reading or to the workshop. And people have been writing some beautiful poems during that time. So is there anything else you wanted to share?
No, I don't think so. I want to hear you talk about Audrey.
Oh, okay, fabulous. All right, so I'm going to go first. And I have been given dispensation, I guess, because there are 2 of us and it's Poetry Month. Our official lesbian trading card that Nicole will be talking about is Muriel Brucer. And I love Muriel. I actually had the joy in college of interning for Paris Press with the amazing poet Jan Freeman, who published all of these books. But I actually really want to talk about Audrey and Rich, because she was kind of like my lesbian godmother, foremother. And I you know, came out to myself when I was a kid, and I was super lonely. I was in a pretty conservative part of Central Florida, and I was having a really, really hard time. I loved reading. I loved being athletic, which was not awesome for girls at that time. And I wandered into a used bookstore and I found this book, Dream of a Common Language, which I have now had for—
See, Sylvia knows.
Yeah. I have now had for 25 years. I read it probably once a year, and every single time it gives me something new. And people have written entire volumes of biographies of Rich and articles far more eloquently than I could. So I really just want to talk a little bit about my relationship with Rich and what she's meant to me. Because finding this book, which was the first collection of poetry I ever owned, it companioned me in a way that I desperately needed at that time. So if you haven't read this collection, please remedy that, because it's astonishing. But she writes about both public figures, and I'll be reading a couple of those poems. She writes about, I believe it's a Russian climber who was lost while mountaineering. She writes about Marie Curie, but she also writes about friends that she loves desperately, a friend who had a double mastectomy. She writes about Michelle Cliff, who is her lifelong partner that she had, just recently gotten together with. And this was also a collection, which I didn't know until later, that she wrote right after she came out publicly as a lesbian. And there's such joy in these poems, but it's hard-won joy. It's that she has fought to love in this way. And that was so moving to me. And, you know, to see her writing about not just sex, so there's some good sex in the poem, it's fantastic, but very sexy poems, but also to write about, you know, being middle-aged and loving someone else who was middle-aged. And to me, what that said at 15 was that I was going to get to grow up and I was going to get to fall in love with someone and share a life with them. And that was really what I needed more than anything else. So I'm going to start by reading, I'm just going to read from this book. Yay, hearts. Yes. She's amazing. And I've quoted from
Sandy
her.
said she's got a massive collection of her work.
Oh, yeah.
And the book is central to.
In case you wonder what Adrienne looks like, here are her collected poems. It's a rather thick volume, absolutely worth reading. And we have a lot of her essays and everything behind us.
Gotta love it when a whole face can fit on the screen.
And it's nice because she's always looking out at us. And I've noticed that when I film myself for readings, Audrey and Rich will be like in the corner, hopefully blessing whatever it is that I'm doing. Did you want me to move the camera? Are you getting
No.
Okay. So I'm going to start by reading a poem by Rich. And this is one of those poems that kind of told me I was one day going to get to live the type of life that I thought I would like to live, and that I found, which I feel very lucky about. This is a poem called Splittings. 1. My body opens over San Francisco, like the daylight raining down, each pore crying the change of light. I am not with her. I have been waking off and on all night to that pain, not simply absence, but the presence of the past, destructive to living here and now. Yet if I could instruct myself, if we could learn to learn from pain, even as it grasps us, if the mind that lives in this body could refuse to let itself be crushed in that grasp, it would loosen. Pain would have to stand off from me and listen. Its dark breath still on me, but the mind could begin to speak to pain, and pain would have to answer. We are older now. We have met before. These are my hands before your eyes, my figure blotting out all that is not mine. I am the pain of division, creator of divisions. It is I who blot your lover from you, and not the time zones, nor the miles. It is not separation calls me forth, but I who am separation. And remember, I have no existence apart from you. 2. I believe I am choosing something new, not to suffer uselessly. And that line really spoke to me after this past year of the pandemic. Not to suffer uselessly, yet still to feel. Does the infant memorize the body of the mother and create her in absence, or simply cry primordial loneliness? Does the bed of the stream once diverted, mourning, remember wetness? But we live so much in these configurations of the past. I choose to separate her from my past we have not shared. I choose not to suffer uselessly, to detect primordial pain as it stalks toward me, flashing its bleak torch in my eyes, blotting out her particular being, the details of her love. I will not be divided from her or from myself by myths of separation, while her mind and body in Manhattan are more with me than the smell of eucalyptus coolly burning on these hills. 3. The world tells me I am its creature. I am raked by eyes, brushed by hands. I want to crawl into her for refuge, lay my head in the space between her breast and shoulder, abnegating power for love, as women have done, or hiding from power in her love, like a man I refuse these givens, the splitting between love and action. I am choosing not to suffer uselessly and not to use her. I choose to love this time for once with all my intelligence.
By the way, if you hear snoring in the background, our dog is on the couch letting us know what he thinks.
Yeah, he's tired of poetry. And I love that refrain of, not loving uselessly. Like, I think that is so valuable. And it made me think of, I'm just going to read at first from Take Me With You Wherever You're Going, which is mostly a book of poems exploring marriage. Thinking about the ways that difficulty has shaped, thank you, Sandy, has shaped my love and our relationship. What do I mean by that? Well, I have just found that in Nicole, because we really got together when we were both in our 30s, that we are headstrong people. And one of the things that we value in each other is that she is just as stubborn as I am, which actually makes me change, which is beautiful, right? What more can you ask for? So here's a little poem about that. The first rule of rock tumbling is rocks must be of similar hardness. Naked on the front porch, the moon unfurling its light as though for a picnic. Our yard is silver and set for feasting. When we married, I was all elbows and angles with one pace, which was my pace, which was fast forward. She was all cushion and curve, considerable sharpness shivved inside a pillow, deliberate thinker, decision circler, all around slow goer. Despite this, we loved hard enough to want the other always at our side. So where others reminisce of their early honeymoon years, ours were more rock tumbler, more slurry and coarse grind. Two roughs bashing together until our edges wore, well, not smooth exactly, but worn into each other, gear tight, cog in cog, turning our shared hours. Like this hour on this night, when I stand between the moon and her so she wears the light like an unzipped jumpsuit, shoulders plaited, outer thighs striped bright. At her center, my shadow, that tailor-made eclipse, a darkness exactly my size. Though we could easily change places and have and will. She steps sides lit, I step backlit to match our shaded places. And only once we're fit like this, dark to dark, are we once more bound by the light we each carry. Thank you. And I saw someone mentioned in the chat, the Floating Love poem, which, like, good God, how can you not read that? And I thought this was like my personal poem that I love so much. And then I got to Smith College and I saw every first year giving other first years this poem as like a little love note. So here is my love note too. The Floating Poem, Unnumbered. And this is from the section 21 Love Poems. Whatever happens with us, your body will haunt mine, tender, delicate, your lovemaking like the half-curled frond of the fiddlehead fern enforced, just washed by sun. Your traveled, generous thighs between which my whole face has come and come, the innocence and wisdom of the place my tongue has found there. The live and satiate dance of your nipples in my mouth, your touch on me, firm, protective, searching me out. your strong tongue and slender fingers reaching where I had been waiting years for you in my rose-wet cave. Whatever happens, this is.
Shoot, I need my church fan.
I know. And I've been told I can't read the really sexy poems in my book. There are a couple of them. But this one I got approval for. In Wyoming. All the flies in the valley, not a sexy beginning, but we'll get there. All the flies in the valley were buzzing at the windows. Wing flits fizzing the afternoon bright as sparkling water. As they were our only neighbors, we climbed the loft's ladder clothed and descended it naked, proud not to have clocked our heads against the roof's crossbeam, woozy nonetheless with that suspended, elevated hour. An hour when we almost just nearly slipped our skins, lost track of our insistent edges, that good kind of losing. If our cabin were the barn next door, this loft would be where the hay was stored. Bale after bale of sun-drenched stalks, the herds feasting all winter on summer. I've returned now alone to read, but mostly to listen, hovering in the God seat. There's the loose flutter of a mare's sigh, half asleep in the yard. Above, the teeth-on-tin screech of a hawk. Below, the tink of her spoon on a dish as she scoops up peas cooked slow with butter and salt, as she was taught as a child. A helping of home in these faraway mountains. Up here, unseen, the heat drifts up from the stove's glow, the peas haze, my love's contented breath, the memory of her face beneath mine, simmering until I am blanched as a boiled tomato, and a single touch is all it would take to part my skin in a neat seam. A touch to peel back this porous facade so I can drift down and settle inside her like steam, like whatever comfort and ripeness her body might need. Thank you.
So I get I'm a modest girl, and I told her, I was like, don't read nothing too racy now. I won't be able to handle getting on the camera after. And she said to me, don't worry, I'll read the Wyoming poem because it ends with you cooking peas. So everything will be fine. It did,
that was true.
As if that's what the poem was about. So I've been sitting with Muriel Brucer for the past few weeks getting ready for this reading, and I've got 3 of her delightful books here, all published by Paris Press. And I let it dictate what I'm going to share with you the first half of this reading, because it made me kind of go back and think about who I was. And in particular, I want to start with something that Muriel said in her play, Houdini. She said, what would happen if one woman told the truth about her life? The world would split open. And I love that so much. And in particular, I love that when I pick up this book, on the back side of it is my hero, who is Dorothy Allison. And Dorothy said about Muriel, she said that Muriel Brucer gave her the notion, the promise of what art could be. Nothing stopped her, neither war nor fear, shame or confusion. She knew fear, but did not give in to it. She went through fear as she went through hatred, coming out the other side into hope. And I took her life as an ideal. It was from her that I learned that art is not product. Art is life itself. And so you know, when I think about it, you know, Muriel died when I was only 6 years old. But even then, everything that she was doing, the road that she was laying down allowed me to walk the path of my life. And I think of how things work. And when I think of how things work, you know, I think of that lineage that allows us to survive, because it was Dorothy who gave me permission, and then Muriel that gave Dorothy permission. And I imagine all of these women in this long chain holding hands saying, I got you, take my hand, let me pull you up, let me pull you up, let me pull you up. And I know that it's that community of women that literally that saved my life. And it's an unstoppable community. It's an unstoppable community of queer women, really, for me. And it's meant so much to me. And of course, one of those women was Jan Freeman, who ran Paris Press for years, who also published, of course, The Life of Poetry, which is an American classic. And so many times did I turn to this book. And what I wanted to do is read for you just a couple of lines from this book, and then share with you some of my early poems to show you what happens when that strength is lent, what it was that saved me. Of course, this book opens with an introduction, and it reads, "In a time of crisis, we summon up our strength. Then, if we are lucky, we are able to call every resource, every forgotten image that can leap to our quickening, every memory that can make us know our power." And I love that so much. And of course, she also said, the universe is made of stories, not atoms. And she said, I am working out the vocabulary of my silence. That one, I am working out the vocabulary of my silence. She said, breathe in experience, breathe out poetry. She said, if there were no poetry on any day in the world, poetry would be invented that day, for there would be an intolerable hunger. And she said, the sources of poetry are in the spirit seeking completeness. And she said, I hear the singing of the lives of women. They clear mystery, the offering, and pride. She said, exchange is creation. She said, the fear of poetry is an indication that we are cut off from our own reality. That one's really important. If I'm not living my own reality, I can't write. And she said, this is a really important one for me. However confused the scene of our life appears, however torn we may be, who now do face that scene, it can be faced, and we can go on to be whole. So that one was super important. So I'm going to go back and show you what happened when I found those lines and when I read Dorothy Allison and that hand was reached out to me. And I'm going to go back for that to my first book, Sister. And I'm going to read this poem for you. It's called Speak and Spell. Of course, I always did spell it wrong, because there's no way to speak and spell things right, especially after all those years washing with the wash rag, frying in Earl, stuffing my drawers in a chifforobe, settling down into a pallet on the floor. And it's true, I got up in front of a crowd, said succulent when I meant succinct. Wouldn't have known better if not for my boss, red-faced, ashamed. All those words I'd read but never heard out loud. All those words we made our own. Go home, sister. Open the kitchen drawer. It's the only place you'll find a thing to write with. Maybe one of his drafting pencils, too square to roll and sharpened with a knife. Maybe a stick of her eyeliner, greasy coal brown. Or maybe under napkins, coupons, and ketchup packs, you'll find that crayon I always used, the daffodil color of spring, and so short you have to peel back the last of its paper, have to hold it with the tips of all your fingers to get anything down. I want you to write Pedi, P-E-D-I. As in, get those baby shots at the pediatrician, as in the whore got her toes painted red. Then scratch out the I, the singular I, because the point of view doesn't matter anymore, because vowels are tricky. It's already 8 o'clock, we might say, way past time. Add an O, because the O is a mouth, empty and round, a number multiplied to make nothing. Then add the word file, F-I-L-E, as in his cabinet, always locked, never mind what's inside. Then change the F to PH, those 2 secret consonants whispering into the phone. The rest is game show simple. Take an E and end it. Who knew there was a word for it, much less a right way to write it down? Pick up that crayon again. Show me what you've learned. Make this into a word. Make it a note left behind. Know the good thing about yellow. It's so light, she'll never see. And to make sure, write it on something she'll read, but read over. A grocery list, a receipt, a Christmas card from me. So that poem took about 15 years to write. I think I started it when I was just barely a teenager, and then just went through draft after draft after draft. And I found it because of the work of Muriel and the work of Dorothy Allison and the work of Laurent Beausolar, who is sitting right here. And these many women who are like, I gotcha. It's all right. Damn it. And then the work helped me find, because it did move into, go on with your bad self, joy after that. So I'm going to move over to my second book, which is about my grandmother. The first book is all to my sister, reaching back, talking about my childhood, figuring things out. And my second is about my mean ass, tough as new rope, Kentucky grandmother. And this poem is the last poem that I wrote. The book deals a lot with her life and what she went through. But I wrote this poem at the very end because I realized there was something missing from it, and that was a moment of really important joy. And thinking about reaching back, this poem opens with an epigraph by Marian Moore. And that epigraph is, satisfaction is a lowly thing. How pure a thing is joy. This is mortality. This is eternity. So that's worth saying again. Jessica put it on a birthday cake for me once. I'm going to say it again, just in case y'all listening to this. Satisfaction is a lowly thing. How pure a thing is joy. This is mortality. This is eternity. It's Marian Moore. An invitation for my grandmother. When Mama called to say you were gone, I was in New York and climbed the impossible top of a brownstone to talk myself down. Don't get sentimental. Dying is what grandmothers do, was what I told myself. But what I should have done was invite you there with me. You'd never been further north than Cincinnati, and the view, the spatter and fleck of all those lights, you'd have to see to believe. So now that you're on the other side and got your knees working again, a proposition. Come, lace up your kids, walk with me a while. I won't say the world's better. It's not. Since you left, I've seen a pelican stretch her wings to dry, the dripping petrol making her into a bent crucifix of oil. And the penguins have dropped their proud eggs into melted ice. And this spring, yet another wind bulldozed my neighbors, all their homes razed to slab foundation, their trees now splintered bone. But we can take a train out of here. Come, sit next to me. Because out the window, a girl on a horse jumps a junkyard fence. She wears a shirt the color of poppies, of bright soda cans, and I bet you'll agree, blurred, it is a brown pony with red wings. And 3 years ago, can I take you there? My sister, sitting up during a contraction, how she reached inside herself to touch the crown of her son, not yet born. I want to show you the look on her face in that cord cut, a rich earth of blood, a thick black joy. And please take off your shoes now. Stand with me. Last October, when I took a wife, barefoot in the grass. We made our vows, and after, when she held my jaw with both hands, I could feel the bones of my skull rising up to make a face finally seen. So those are two old poems, right? How long ago did we get married now?
Almost 8 years.
8 years ago, right? But something that Muriel said was, my lifetime listens to yours. My lifetime listens to yours. And I just want to say too, there's a student of mine here who'll be reading her poems today. Her name is DeAnna Pedigo, and she just finished her graduate thesis. And I'm really proud of her. And I want to congratulate her, but I want to echo Muriel's words down to you by saying, my lifetime listens to yours.
Good job. Okay, so I have another little brief reading before Nicole, and then listening to all of you, which we're very excited about. And we didn't discuss in advance what we were going to be reading and talking about, but that it actually is such a beautiful binding to what I was planning on reading. And just to say, talking about lineage, like Laurent Beausoleil we eloped, was the sole witness to our wedding. So we had this astonishing woman and
your
poet.
parents will never forgive her.
They will never forgive me. That is very true. But there to bless our wedding. And I just feel like my whole life, as Nicole said, has really been helped along by astonishing women, and especially poets like Eleanor Wilner, Laurent Beausoleil, so many people. And Adrienne Rich, even though I only saw her once when she was in her 80s at a little book fair in San Francisco, and it was like the Red Sea parting. It was this very, very crowded bookstore, and everyone separated. And I was like, "What is there a rock star?" And this tiny woman made her way to the stage, and it was Adrienne, and it like, oh. Yeah, and now I get to work on Beloit Poetry Journal, where we are fortunate to have the Adrienne Rich Award, which it just feels like everything is coming full circle. And Adrienne gives, she honors that lineage, and she writes so often of other women who have inspired her. So I'm going to begin with one of those poems, a poem that opens this collection about Marie Curie, and one of my favorites of hers. Power. Living in the earth deposits of our history. Today, a backhoe divulged out of a crumbling flank of earth one bottle, amber perfect, 100-year-old cure for fever or melancholy, a tonic for living on this earth. In the winters of this climate. Today, I was reading about Marie Curie. She must have known she suffered from radiation sickness, her body bombarded for years by the element she had purified. It seemed she denied to the end the source of the cataracts on her eyes, the cracked and suppurating skin of her finger ends, till she could no longer hold a test tube or a pencil. She died a famous woman denying her wounds. Denying her wounds came from the same source as her power. And I'm going to read you just one new poem, which I think it will also be a love poem, which I appreciate. And I have a new collection of poems that I'm working on that draws on the Old Testament, specifically the book of Genesis. And what I'm finding is power looking at the wounds and power of those women, often who are not named, are only hinted at within the lines of that ancient text. And Mary Miriam was actually kind enough to publish one of those early poems in the Lavender Review, and I'm grateful for that. So here's a poem that looks at Rebecca and is a way of exploring love in the lineage of love. At first sight, many seeings later. Lifting my chin, my wife said, "When you look at my breasts like that, you make my face feel lonely."
Sorry.
I'm glad you're laughing. Yeah, so when you look at my breasts like that, you make my face feel lonely. It's true. So this was new marriage on a Wednesday morning. When Rebecca saw Isaac the first time, he was striding the noon field, a man at full sunlight. He cast no shadow. From her camel, most translators spin Nafal into a lighted, some dignity. The
I'm just going to interrupt for a moment. Hopefully we can get the feedback from Nicole and Jessica, and we'll have Jessica start reading that poem again. Mary, you're there. You can hear me, right? Risa? Yep. Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. All right. Let's see if we can get them back.
Are we back?
Yes.
Yes, you're back. Why don't you start again?
Okay, I'll see if Nicole can not laugh at my poem.
Yeah, maybe that's what threw it all off.
It was Nicole actually turned the router off. That's the secret. Okay.
Oh,
Just kidding. Okay. At first sight, many seeings later. Lifting my chin, my wife said, "When you look at my breast like that, you make my face feel." So this was new marriage on a Wednesday morning. When Rebecca saw Isaac the first time, he was striding the noon field, a man at full sunlight. He cast no shadow. From her camel, most translators spin the word nafal into alighted, allowing her some dignity. The truth is, it means she fell. In a cloud of desert dust, she was a smitten, resplendent heap, lanterning up at her future mate. The truth is, in the beginning, your face was too much for me. The force of my desire. Oh, sorry, Sandy, are we good? Is it cutting out? Yeah, okay, sorry. So the truth is, in the beginning, your face was too much for me. The force of my desire matched. Now, years on, we have matching slippers, and each night on the couch between us, the dog snores. How little we look at what we think we know. Less seeing than simply noting, yes, still there. Yet if the past of love is longing, the future grief, at least for one of us, then let the present shatter the beige of the familiar. Let me fall from my camel again and again. Let me gaze up and see anew the apexed angles of your collarbone. Let me learn them with my tongue. This bird flown into the sweet sheet of your skin, wings in upstroke, your chest, my love, etched forever with this exaltation of flight. Thank you. I'm gonna go plug this.
all right. So I just have two poems that I'm going to read. Both are from To Those Who Are Our First Gods. For the past 6 years, I've been writing about animals, and I've been working at a farm sanctuary and a wildlife rehab center. And it's funny, when I first started writing these poems, I really thought I was leaving behind the subject matter of my first two books, but really I was just continuing to speak for that little girl in some ways. And in thinking about too, and Muriel Rukeyser, in reaching back, I do think there's this lineage of women that I'm always talking to. And of course, when I'm writing about animals, one of those women is Mary Oliver. She is a poet that I absolutely adore, but when I was younger, I really struggled with her for a number of reasons. And I miss her. I'm sorry that there's not more poems by her forthcoming in the world, but there's a lot that I would love to say to her. And that's what this poem is about. It's called No Ark, and it's for Mary Oliver. Ain't no foxes here, Mary. Ain't no grasshoppers resting in my picnic palm. Ain't too many creatures worth a poem like yours, just mewling strays tucked under the dangerous warmth of a pickup's hood. Just poodles with painted nails clicking pink across mama's linoleum floor. So few animals left to this chain store sprawl, this clocked in, bottled, fluorescent lit existence. Even our air conditioned, our vents pointing down with a force fierce enough to keep a bouquet of daisies in full bloom for months. No marsh hawks or wild geese, neither. Maybe a pet shop parakeet with her dried green sprinkle on a carpet of no consequential color. Maybe a street robin bobbing its dingy breast among the crush of lipstick filters and Coke cans. Maybe a sparrow, like the one who kept pecking my window last spring, fighting who knows what, probably his own reflection. And because we believe in wives' tales around here, Mama said, be careful now. Death's trying to get in your door. But then again, once I did see a moth. He was big, big as a burger, supersized as a side of fries, so big he covered the yellow letter P in a homemade sign spray painted on the asphalt of the manager's spot. Not no parking, but kept simple, no park. I was walking. No, Mary, not through the woods or along any breezy shore, but across the lot to the discount store. But the moth, Mary, the moth, half dead, electric green, was unlike anything I'd ever seen. A Luna, I was later told, but back then I thought him a myth knocked out of the sky, a neon messenger sent to tell me that things were once different back when Noah had plenty to gather before the storm. But now here it was, plain as day, spelled out for all who cared to see. No ark, as in ain't no use, not now, not anymore. As in let it rain and rain and rain, ain't nothing left to save. And because I'm not you, no, Mary, I couldn't be if I tried. He scared the shit out of me. 4 drowsy eyes eyeing from tattered wings, one feathered antenna tasting my hair-sprayed artifice, his limp thistle legs that stuck to my hands when I carried him to a safer place. Well, not safe exactly, but at least a place where he would be taken by beak or tooth and not smashed by tires or stomped by some brat's shoes. But what I want to say to you is this. I was frightened, but I once tried to save a thing about to die, tried to ease what was to come. And the bad girl, mentally handicapped and happy just to have her first job, she followed me with her rattling train of carts and her mouth of 2 small teeth tendered in a swollen pit of gums. And when I set the winged thing in the grass behind the dumpster, the girl, she threw that red mouth of hers wide, laughing and laughing into that long line of empty carts. I tell you, she knew. And I never knew empty carts to be so empty. Never knew how much each resembles a cage. And I'm going to end with on an up note, y'all. I'm going up. So I've been doing a lot of research. Jessica will tell you the room next to this one is my office, and it's full of animal books. And I've been studying as much as I can. And one of the treasures I have, thanks, Sandy, is a book about snails. And Deanna, I apologize. I know you just heard this poem not that long ago. But this is Self-Portrait as Land Snail. And then I'll end there and hand it over to y'all. So Self-Portrait as Land Snail. Don't get me wrong. I'm a modest girl. Couldn't even strip off in one of those nudie hot springs out west. The whole place a flotsam of much-nursed areolas and buoyant scrotums, while I sat prim as Gidget, legs crossed and awkwardly smiling on the shore. It's just that the snail is on to something. Neither boy nor girl, but both The critter is nearly mythic, a true hermaphrodite that all alone will go to its own kind of cryobank and baste itself. Make a new batch of not so bouncies in thin, flea-sized shells. But no, that's not me. That seems lonely. Better with another intersex other, it will take aim, flex back its bow, shoot a dart, then wait to be impaled in return. I couldn't make this shit up if I tried. This is no metaphor, but scientific fact, a tellum amoris, literally a weapon of love, a James Bond-worthy arrow equipped with 4 blades, spiked with all the dirty talk a snail could want. Cupid's got nothing on this mollusk congress, and because you know how snails go, the foreplay is slow, slow, slow. My kind of sex, going on and on until the hussy who first received that dart has enough, then rises to fire back. Now, knowing this, I can say I didn't come out all those years ago, whatever that means. No, when I finally made a home for my body in the bed of another woman, I simply became a land snail, tired of being a leaking receptacle for a man's desire. I needed to feel an equal's push against my own, a willingness to be wounded and to wound, receiving and giving at the same time. Plainly said, I needed the kind of love that finally let me take my time. I needed to fire an arrow of my damn own. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I'm just trying to breathe. I'm just being honest. I'm just trying to breathe. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Nickole Brown and Jessica Jacobs. Before I actually read the cards of Adrienne Rich and Muriel Brucer so that we can honor them properly here as well, how about we unmute and just show our, whatever we can show these two, like in a oh, fabulous.
Hey babe, would you like to get some goats with me? Start a little farm, no need for alarm. Get some chickens and horses, little lambs of courses. Yeah, we've been milking them goats.
Thanks for the love, Mary. Well, again, thank you so much to both of you. Jessica Jacobs, card number 24, and Nickole Brown, card number 26. Sharing the voices of 2 of our sisters from that lineage, Adrienne Rich, card number 30, and Muriel Brucer, card number 43. Let me read those cards for you all so that we have the full spectrum of history here. Well, Adrienne Rich, 1929 to 2012, was born in Baltimore, Maryland, to a Jewish father and a Southern Protestant mother. Her influences, poet, essayist, feminist, and activist, spanned a 60-year career that produced more than 30 books. A lifetime focus on feminism, sexuality, civil rights, Jewish identity, and the anti-war movement positioned her as a leading activist whose work remains relevant today. Rich's first book, A Change of World, 1951, won the Yale Younger Poets Award. Diving into the Wreck, 1973, won the National Book Award. Other prizes for her work include the Ruth Lilly Poetry Prize, the Lannan Lifetime Achievement Award, and a MacArthur Genius Grant. Her nonfiction book of Woman Born from 1976 is a ruthless personal probe of motherhood and remains a classic feminist text. This was followed by the essay Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Existence in 1980. Though married with 3 sons, she came out as a lesbian in 1976, beginning a lifelong relationship with writer and editor Michelle Clift. Whew. As if sharing Adrienne Rich's card wasn't enough. Oof. Now we go to Muriel Rukeyser. Muriel Rukeyser was born in 1913 into an upper middle class Jewish family in New York. She attended Vassar College and Columbia University, and in 1935, her first book of poetry, Theory of Flight, was selected for the Yale Younger Poets series. She was briefly married, but was silent about her sexual orientation, feeling that it had no place in her poems until later years when she came out in poems such as Despiacious and Looking at Each Other. An acute political and social consciousness informed her life and work. Feminist and lesbian readers deeply value her poetry. She was an activist for many causes and served as president of Penn's American Center. Her poetic models were gay poets W.H. Auden and Walt Whitman. Though she seems to have struggled with internalized homophobia, in 1978, she agreed to participate in a reading of lesbian poets at the Modern Language Association convention. Sadly, illness prevented her from attending. She died in 1980. And let me once again show you that really classic text. I always have it by my side, right behind me here, because this book was the inspiration for Cultivating Voices live poetry. I read the introduction to invite people to join that group that I started last year. Thanks to the both of you for sharing your stories, your devotion to poetry, living and writing together, as Rukeyser reminds us, at the end of that introduction. And poetry, where is there a place for poetry? And then I began to say what I believe. That is the essence of the work. Thanks for all the ways that the two of you have created ways to say what you believe so that others can say what they believe. And I wish you well on your journey, the source of your power, your new endeavor, Sun June, and all those new poems. Well, I could talk to the two of them forever, actually, but we must go on. For those of us who appreciate what Headmistress Press continues to do, to bring writers like Nicole and Jessica to this virtual stage here during the pandemic, and to keep the life and work of other LGBTQ writers vibrant, well, why not purchase 1, 2, or all sets, or all the sets? Well, we know there's one that's out of print, but all of the Lesbian Poet Trading Card series. Pairing a card with books by the authors makes for fantastic, unique gifts for your favorite lesbian, including yourself. And it's National Poetry Month, for gosh sakes. Well, it's a grand time to, share the love. Get the voices into your bookcases of those writers that you love. So head on over to Headmistress Press's website and make those purchases. Well, now to our special open mic during April here, Poetry Month. And it's not just Poetry Month in the US, but actually in many countries around the world. I happen to know that Canada and Ireland celebrate Poetry Month in April as well. I will introduce each of our three readers, our poets today as they read. And our first, whom you had a brief preview of through Nicole, is Deanna Fadigo, who is an upcoming poet who will be graduating with her MFA from the Sewanee School of Letters in May. Yes, absolutely. Congratulations. Her biggest inspirations in writing lately have been Emily Dickinson, Ross Gay, and Claudia Emerson. She currently lives in Knoxville, Tennessee, and hopes to teach creative writing in the future. Please welcome Deanna, and congratulations.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay? So my first poem, speaking of Emily Dickinson, I have a couple of pieces about her that I'm going to read today. The first piece is called Sparrow for Emily Dickinson. I spend a wild night with her, upstairs in her dusty attic bedroom, where we touch in the motes of midnight, fingertips singing the page of our bodies. Then she makes me breakfast for dinner, apron strings tied in a bow at the dip of her lower back, her arms powdered up to the elbows in baking flour that she later sprinkles in the skillet to thicken. She feeds me biscuits and gravy, lines about hearts and home, a breast fit for pearls. I feed her a story about a pearl in the moon that she tongues when her tongue gets so tired of praying to death, tired of praying for penance. We only need the salvation of sharing a page with one brown pencil between us. She pulls that pencil from her dress pocket after brushing biscuit crumbs away and draws the smallest crescent moon, invisible on my wrist, but it burns like a brand. And I often find myself wishing I could see that moon on my skin, like I wish Emily could pin it in ink sent off to the press with her poems. The moon is named Sue, of course, floating under a pencil with no eraser. Sue, 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 like the chirp of a sparrow. And I tell Emily my favorite of her poems is the one with a sparrow's sweet perennial nest. When I ask for more of that story, she tells me she and Susan built blanket forts in the attic. I see them clear as day, small silhouettes surrounded by scribbled scraps of journal, a pencil broken in two and sharpened on the ends, exchanging letters as treasures, the way Emily's father placed a string of pearls on her mother's neck. Emily took those pearls, put them on Susan, in the light of a midnight candle, illuminating the blanket fort they pretended was a wedding veil, a shroud big enough to cover them both. And the next poem I'm going to read is called First Crush at 23. I've never touched her. I've never touched her hair, her goldenrod hair, city of goldenrods. I want to live inside her goldenrod garden, touch her goldenrods of hair, feel her want me back, her hands sting the back of my neck, gentle sting, pink moon fingernails, gentle sting, being wanted back. My fingers in gold, like Midas is a woman with gold on her fingers in hair. Touch me back, lie against my back, folded into sheets, folded into you. Hair whispers on my neck, a whisper of goldenrods I've never touched, a whisper of moon pink gentle sting. I've never touched your hair, but I have touched my want. And this next one is called Breathing. Left her husband for a woman is all I hear my mom say. Before, I was spooning my soup beans in a haze, half listening, but those words pierced the droning fog of dinner gossip about you, a girl from my childhood church. I remember you, boyish, square-jawed, swimming in men's plaid shirts, cargo pants. You carried yourself like a Hyperion tree, towering unmatched. The sway of your strut, dirty hair peeking under a backwards cap. I don't remember your voice, but I hear it deep, like the center of a midnight lake. You came from a nest of sisters, but wore men's clothing without shame. The way in middle school, I wore my brother's t-shirts and basketball shorts before the first stroke of eyeliner in 8th grade that I didn't mean. Heavy coal under each lid, smeared like 2 bruises. Exactly how my best friend wore hers when a boy first looked at her with desire. The first time I felt as thin as air. I didn't want him, not really. I just wanted to be wanted. I saw you years later at a funeral, on the arm of your husband and trailed by 2 daughters. You were awkward in makeup. I felt sorry for you. No, sorry isn't quite right. You looked like a fake flower, plastic stem stuck in a florist foam block. You were rootless, not alive, just there to look pretty. I felt your suffocation. When my mom says what she says at dinner, she tuts. But I feel my lungs expand in relief for you, a woman who married a man, had children with him, and one day let go of the lie. I want to say I never really knew you, but I know you. I know you, and I am still struggling to breathe. Give me some of your air, because I know what that Baptist thumb can do to a gay woman, how it convinces a Hyperion she is a fake flower, how it chokes me on the backwashed venom in my mom's voice when she speaks of you and doesn't realize she is also talking about me. And the last poem I'm gonna read is called Sparrow's Elegy, and this one is for Sue Gilbert. After Emily dies, Susan washes her body, torso bent, casting long shadows over her lover, the pair bathed in candle and moonlight as Sue uncinches Emily's white dress, the one with pockets, peels it from her still form as carefully as when they were girls under the sheets. The dress is no longer warm, but Emily's scent lingers, baking flour, tree sap, pencil wood. I imagine the silent noise of the washing, the wrinkled tips of Sue's fingers clinging to a white cloth as she dips it in warm water, strokes a path across that pale forehead. She lifts each cold wrist, brushes her cloth along the inner skin between Emily's fingers. They are worn and calloused from gripping those small pencils, from turning pages in books. Sue washes Emily's collarbone and breast, her hand moving in gentle circles over the skin. Then she presses her face against that empty chest, back bowed as if in prayer, imagines breathing, breathing for both of them. The sound, a whisper like sparrow wings, clinging to the wind for one last flight. And that's all I got.
That's plenty. That's not all you have. Like, that is
Thank you.
fantastic. Wow. Thank you so much. Well, we're going to look forward to your book sometime soon, I predict. And here's an example of that lineage that we were speaking about right in front of us today. The lineage, the witness of the lineage, the significance of the lineage. Thank you so much, DeAnna. And of course, thank you, Nicole. And to all your 4 poets that created this lineage today. Wow, extraordinary work. I am so looking forward to hearing the poetry of Freesia McKee. Freesia McKee is a poet, micro-memoirist, book reviewer. Let us not forget the importance of the book reviewers. I just want to interrupt to say how important, we all know how important your role, time, and intellect is in this endeavor. Anyway, Freesia is a poet, micro-memoirist, book reviewer, teacher, and author of How Distant the City. She's a 2021 contributor to the Plowshares blog and the essays editor at South Florida Poetry Journal. Please welcome Freesia McKee.
Hey everyone. Thank you so much. I feel so lucky to be here with all of you. I first got really into Jessica and Nicole's work when my mentor, Denise Duhamel, put Pelvis with Distance and Fanny Says in my hands and said, Freesia, I think you'll enjoy these. And I really, really did. I'm gonna read one poem and it's about living in Indiana, which is not like anywhere else I've ever lived before. Living here, I am, I guess, more aware of the commitment of a lot of people to restricting abortion access. So that's been on my mind a lot because that is so visible here. And I wanted to also dedicate this poem to Risa and her work in healthcare for so many years and her advocacy. Fetal funeral. Our neighbor on the corner a few blocks over has planted "Pray to End Abortion" signs in her front and backyards. I've never seen her, but armed with duct tape, I fantasize about defacement or replacement. I want the final word. Pray for more vasectomies, or an erasure poem, employing letters selectively, rat arbor or to ebort. I have Sharpies. I fantasize about leaving my blue coat at home so she'd never know it was me if she saw me. I'd wear a mask so she could not see my face. In any case, none of our neighbors here know who we are. We moved mid-pandemic, and I've never stepped foot in any real Hoosiers house except a stranger from Craigslist who texted us the code to unlock, enter, and carry out a dresser she was giving away for free. We could have stolen her dog. We could have stolen her wall art about the Fighting Irish. She left the house to pick up her son from school, an emergency, so the house was quiet and we stayed quiet as if we were in church. After 8 months in isolation, I'd already forgotten that every home smells different, signature of the people who live there. I wonder if that house on the corner smells like rose bouquets, memorials for the fetuses its inhabitants mourn publicly in perpetuity. I feel unable to let go of my indignation about living in Indiana, home of fetal funerals and vigils for the unborn. And in my mind, this is also connected to Ryan White's bullies and the woman in the liquor store who laughed at me when I asked why she wasn't wearing a mask the day after my friend was put on a ventilator. If only I'd told the maskless woman she was ugly. Pandemic or not, you're ugly as hell. I seem unable to let go of my wish to harm. The woman pulled a polka dot mask out of her pocket to show me she remembered, but refused to put it on. My friend survived. We don't go to that store anymore. Instead, the dog and I walk by the corner house, where I begin my fantasies about tearing the yard signs down. At the base of a beautiful sycamore in the front, they've built a tiny fairy house. I laugh terribly when I think it's perfectly sized for fetal funerals, which have not been moved online, nor the vigils because they are performance. I feel forced to grieve my own losses privately. This has been my aching grievance. I'm glad that far away the signs look small. The leafless sycamore is taller than every house. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Freesia. What wonderful, wonderful poems. And again, thanks for all your work, Plowshares and South Florida Poetry Journal. Denise Duhamel was just, I just saw her do a reading with Julie Marie Wade. another dynamic duo, frankly. I mean, they're collaborators. I call them co-conspirators. Co-spirators is what I call them. So again, I love that we name the lineages. I love that we, like, you know, it's important to recognize. So thank you for bringing your poetry and the work of others to all of us today. And next time you talk to Ladette Randolph, tell her I said hello. I went to graduate school with her. Well, our final poet today, I don't want the reading to end. I'm sorry. I just really don't want it to end. Can we find some more people to read? No, sorry. Our final poet today is Callie Lightfoot. Callie Lightfoot's first collection of poems, Pelted by Flowers, was recently published by Coventry Press. Yay! Woo! Love it. And named by Lambda Literary as one of April's most anticipated LGBTQ books. And we have it, and we have those poems here today. Callie's poems and reviews of poetry books have appeared in journals and anthologies, including the ever-relevant Lavender Review, Feminine Rising, and Broadsides to Books. Her work has been nominated twice for the Pushcart Prize and once for Best of the Net. She earned an MFA at Vermont College of Fine Arts and lives in Salem, Massachusetts with Oscar the Wild Cat. Would you please welcome, with her debut collection, Callie Lightfoot. Woo!
Thank you, Sandy. I'm still getting used to having this thing as an object in my hand. It just came this week on Wednesday, so, or Tuesday, I guess. And it's gorgeous. I'm going to start with poem number 1 from the book. And this is called Cousin Margaret's Friend, 1955. Cousin Margaret opened her door, smiling. A sweater wrapped tight around her, she spoke of the chill in Miami that day. Pale, fey woman, shy with us, her cousins from the north. An exotic bird who might at any moment disappear. Margaret's friend lightly touched her shoulder, then filled the space beside her, smiled, and shook my father's hand. They led us to the parlor for coffee and pie. We balanced china plates and cups, the adults catching up. The friend promised to take me to her pet store, making her my hero. The kid who rescued sick birds from our yard back home. Later, my dad and the friend went out back, laughing together, ripping the husks from coconuts on a sharpened metal stake, tall and lethal. Next morning after breakfast, a young man knocked, whisked into the parlor by Margaret's friend, murmuring head to head, poring over charts. Her bookie, my mom's whispered. She's betting on the horses. We all went to Hialeah racetrack that afternoon. This was years before Cousin Margaret died, a bum ticker, my dad said. Margaret's friend sat in her car outside her pet store, stuffed an old rag into the exhaust pipe. Mom and Dad just clucked their tongues at the news and exchanged a glance. Half my life went by before I understood. Now I too have loved a woman and lost her to death, but not to silence. I wish I could sit in the parlor with Margaret's friend, ask how they met, ask about their life together, push aside the china cups and take her hand. I wish I knew her name. Whew. I think I've listened to quite a bit of emotion today and I'm getting it myself. All right. And now we fast forward about 40 years, I think. In the meantime, between these, I have been a drunk for 15 years, gotten sober, and come out, and been in a committed relationship. Paula, dying of Huntington's, which is a neurological disease, if you're not familiar with it. In this, my 76th year, I realize you were the love of my life. I have been in love with others since, but none whose inner child played so well with mine, none who loved my vocabulary, nor found me funny, nor believed the shaman who told us that my destiny is to go through life as the holy fool. Too bad your grown-up self was crazy as a bedbug and as nimble bed to bed, landing finally with that guy who offered you S&M and a trip to Denmark to meet his family. I still have the Danish paper stars you folded for me that Christmas. I would have stayed, you know, all the way through to the end, even knowing we were over. The fireworks of intimacy dead. All we had ahead to live the long denouement of disease. But you had the mad, dark grace to sleep with the Dane and extricate us both. The day I moved out, we said goodbye and hugged, sadly civilized women making the best. You closed the door. I walked away, but had to return for my jacket, forgotten in our farewells. The door opened. My dry, wide eyes found you sobbing. And now for a complete change of mood. Liz Bradfield, who did the foreword from this book, for this book, at some point in our connections with each other, gave me the title of this poem. And it's quite short. Queer nobility. Fairy, the knotted face shouts at me this morning from a dented car racketing along Canal Street. Stunned, confused, I think, shouldn't that be faggot? And then, do I look like a gay man in my jeans, boots, corduroy shirt? A construction worker from the Village People, maybe. But come on, man. Fairy feels to me like princess, and I'm happy to make it my own. Leslie Princess, the Duchess of Dyke, Butch Baroness, Muff Diver to Her Majesty. Thank you.
Great. Oh my gosh. Congratulations again to you, Callie. Wow. Wonderful to have your debut collection, Pelted by Flowers.
Yeah, it's a line from a poem, actually. Pelted by Flowers, so in here.
Enjoy bringing forth the book. The debut only happens once. It's quite a thing. So have a grand time, and we'll see you around at readings. Well, everybody, thanks to our open mic readers, DeAnna Pedigo, Freesia McKee, and Callie Lightfoot. And again, a very, very hearty, got a little chime in it even. Thank you to Jessica Jacobs and Nickole Brown.
Hey, Sandy.
Sharing the, yeah.
I just want you to know, if you want to go out on the town later, green hat too.
I like that cap. Let's do it. I'm coming to Asheville. I'm coming to Asheville.
Okay.
We're gonna go out.
Okay.
Jessica Jacobs and Nickole Brown. You've seen the cap here now on the Collectibles, sharing the poetry, the power, and the significance of Adrienne Rich and Muriel Brucer. Extraordinary. Well, we come together every single month here to hear from a poet discussing the work of another poet. This month, we doubled our unbelievable poetry power here with the Lesbian Trading Card Series. And next month, we have the woman right bloom powerhouse, J.P. Howard, joining us from Brooklyn to share the work of Pat Parker. That's May 18th, I believe. Double check the date. You will want to be here for that reading. If you've ever been to JP's salon, you will want to be here for the Collectibles. Well, dear friends, thank you for being here today for this just extraordinary display of love, power, and poetry during Poetry Month. I'm Sandy Unone, your host of the Collectibles, with my cap. I tip my cap to all of you. With thanks to Risa Denenberg and Mary Miriam at Headmistress Press. And you can also join me on Sundays on Cultivating Voices Live Poetry. Tomorrow we'll be celebrating the 30th anniversary of Slappering Hall Press, one of the premier publishers of chapbooks in the United States. And on April 25th will be our new books showcase with, among others, Leslie Newman, who joined us quite a few months ago. So come on over to Cultivating Voices and hear Leslie read from her poetry. Well, everyone, take very good care of yourselves. I wish you well during this April month of bloom and poetry, and keep writing those poems. We'll see you next time.